He's in the studio with us. Welcome to the show. Great to have you on. So, host of awards. That was very impressive. I feel a bit intimidated, but we'll go back to the start, right?
Sure.
Because before all those host of awards, you started with the name Kaprooka. Can you tell us the story behind that particular name?
Name?
Yes.
So the primary requirement, I'm very big on names. It's the brand that you are going to give life to, right? So it can't be some ABC company. So it has to have a personality. But more than anything, I really wanted a name that will give me the freedom to do whatever I want under it. Now, if you say cars.com or if you say, flowers.com or something like that, it really narrows you down to a segment. But if you say Amazon.com or eBay, it just opens it up, right? So Kaprooka was that equivalent that gave me the freedom. Plus, you cannot misspell Kaprooka.
Yes.
How hard you try, you can't misspell Kaprooka. Right?
If you hear it, you can.
Yeah, if you hear it, there's only one way you can type it. So with all those qualifications, I picked it. It gave me the freedom to trade whatever I want.
And of course, now talking about Kaprooka, the beginning of Kaprooka, and what like you mentioned, it evolved. It naturally evolved. How did it actually begin? What was the story?
So, I started very early in e-commerce in Sri Lanka. In fact, it's the first e-commerce company in Sri Lanka. Back then, the Sri Lankan e-commerce was not ready it was very, very immature. But I was ready, and I had this whole vision of building the first Sri Lankan e-commerce enterprise. So I needed my customers. I had to find them somewhere. So I found them in the expat community of Sri Lanka. Right? There's about 2.3 million Sri Lankans at any given time living outside of Sri Lanka who already knew e-commerce a little bit better than the Sri Lankans at that time. That's why Kaprooka first started focused on those expats. And then now it's like less than 30% of our business is actually expats. The rest is all actual Sri Lankan people buying for themselves. The early beginning was really focused on the expats.
And of course, now, can you actually explain to us what the e-commerce segment is right now, the market? How many people are actually using online product, and compared to the retail market, what is it?
Okay, good question. So I think with the data that we have, visibility from the Grasshoppers network of the delivery of other e-commerce websites and social commerce, if everything put together, right now it's about $100 million, right? And I remember just a couple of years back, it used to be $40 million. So it's growing, crazy numbers, and that's how e-commerce grows if you look at across the region.
Yeah, and of course it's a growing segment with the advent of telecommunication networks, mobile phones,
but
smartphones.
Still with $100 million, if you really put that in perspective, it's still less than 2.5% of retail industry in Sri Lanka, right? So that means there's so much still more room to grow in the segment of e-commerce in Sri Lanka. If you look at markets like the US and Canada, etc., they are double digits of retail. So it's always a good measurement to look at the retail market size and see what 100 million is. Then you get that number of how much e-com has penetrated. So there's a long way to go.
Yeah, and of course, being in the market segment for such a long time, what do you think was the innovative methods that actually helped you survive this
good question, actually. So one big discipline that I have mastered in e-commerce is to mark out the no-go areas of e-commerce. That is why you will not buy an iPhone from Kaprooka. I will not sell an iPhone. I will not sell a TV. I will not sell a washing machine. So we don't get into categories that does not give us a proportionate margin. But I would rather sell a 40-footer container of handbags in 1 week than trying to sell 5 TVs. Right? So we stick to categories that we are really good at making a larger margin, and we are very good at controlling the source and the brands, etc. So we really stick to the categories, as I said, that will give us more profits. Right? So that made us more sustainable. Actually, that's how we sustained, because we never raised money on this company. There was just seed money coming from personal.
It was personal money that you started.
Even personal is $500. That's how I started. I don't know whether you can even call it seed money. Yeah. So it was entirely bootstrapped company with its own profits.
Of course. So it was a natural growth, I think, that Kaprooka has experienced. And actually, talking about that natural growth, you have diversified. Was that diversification process also somewhat natural?
What do you mean by diversifying? Means separate companies?
Companies?
Well, one of the major diversification we did was we got into the delivery business, using the Grasshoppers brand. What I found out that Kapraka was very good at from the beginning was because there was no FedEx here, there was no DHL, or even the postal service were not ready to do e-commerce when I back started. So I had to do my own delivery. So there was so much of learnings about how to do deliveries. So there I saw an opportunity. Why not, carve this delivery piece out and actually create a delivery company and help others also get into e-commerce? Because look, the whole e-commerce, the industry, I can't build this industry on my own. So I need more companies to get into e-commerce, right? And first thing that they struggle with is delivery. They can build a website, they can get the products, portfolios, all that, and do the marketing and everything. But when an order comes from Polonnaruwa, they're like, okay, how do I do cash on delivery and all those things come. That's why we built Grasshoppers. That was one of our best diversification paths that we've taken.
I think it has been recognized as such as well, with the international awards coming in. I think those innovative developments are the ones that set you apart. Now, of course, talking about that sort of development and getting companies, the leading companies, into e-commerce, you've started another company from Kapraka, which allows our products, the ones that are locally manufactured, go into the global market space.
Right.
Can you talk about a little bit about that?
Yeah, so you're talking about what we brand it as Kapraka Cross Border. What we do here is we identify Sri Lankan flagship brands that has a demand in the international markets. It could be Sri Lankan tea, Sri Lankan cinnamon, etc. I will not mention each brand name, but when I say Sri Lankan tea, suddenly you remember few brands, right? Those brands today, if you look and try to buy from Amazon in the US, you are buying from Kapraka. Because we are the ones now distributing on Amazon and on eBay, etc. Because before I came into this, these were US companies or Canadian companies or British companies that were buying our Sri Lankan products, taking them over there and selling them with about a margin of sometimes 300-400%. But now we got in there, we got into a price game, we dropped the prices by almost half, and we managed to now bring all those dollars to Sri Lanka because now it's been distributed by a Sri Lankan company.
Same quality, lower price.
Lower price.
And of course, now talking about delivery market again. Now, of course, I think grasshoppers.
Grasshoppers.
Yes, grasshoppers. One of the things that sets it apart from, I guess, the international delivery companies is cash on delivery.
Yeah.
Can you just talk a little bit about cash on delivery? Because I think I understand when you say cash on delivery, it's self-explanatory, but what's that process like?
Okay, so in the Asian markets, especially even in India, about 80% of e-commerce runs on cash. Even a guy who has a credit card in his pocket still prefers to order using cash option. You will pay for it when the product arrives at your doorstep. So today, Grasshoppers does, let's say, 300, 400 deliveries every day to Anuradhapura. How much of that do you think is ordered through credit card? Almost zero, right? All those 300 are ordered through COD. So our riders are trained to collect cash and do the proper bank deposits and use our system to give the money back to the sellers properly. So this tech stack has been built by Grasshoppers in order to facilitate that. If I remove the COD piece out, we will lose about 80% of our orders overnight. Right.
So it was a need that actually.
It was a huge need, and I don't try to push payment methods to them because the cash on delivery is, if I use a credit card, the merchant loses about 2.5% to 3% on the transaction fee. If you do cash on delivery, there's no fee at all, right? So why block it? If people really want it, I'm driven by the people's demand, right? So even if you have a credit card, but if you still prefer to use COD option, go ahead, use COD.
And now talking about businesses, I think we coming back to the industry, your left side of it. When you're talking about building a business, how much of it is driven on the need you see versus just wanting to start a business? Alan? It's
kind of 50-50, right? Because when you start very early, it's really what's driving you is the need that you have as an entrepreneur to do this, right? Because I remember when I started Kapraka, it was really the need for me to do an e-commerce company. The country was not even ready. This was 12, 13 years back. Right? So it was a need that gave me 50%, and the rest is what you told, the market demand, and we are just...
Yeah, and of course, now talking about the e-commerce market segment, you mentioned that we are only, right now in Sri Lanka, it's 2.5% of the retail market. If you are actually to grow that, or if you want the e-commerce market segment to grow in the country, what should the next steps be?
Okay, great questions. we need more international companies to come here and try to do e-commerce. We have Daraz here, Sri Lanka, but we need to get Amazon here. We need to get maybe even Flipkart here. We need to get Shopee here. We need these other e-commerce companies also to come to Sri Lanka and really give that FDI, that cash infusion. If you look at how India and other countries where e-com has really boomed, if you zoom into those charts, you will see it's kind of going flat. When it starts to take that hockey stick, and if you zoom in there, it's always a huge FDI. It's always a big investment coming to the country, burning a lot of money. That's one option. Second option is the Sri Lankan big brands, right? It could be Singer, it could be Abans, it could be SoftLogic, it could be all these electronic, especially the electronic big brands, need to bet big on e-commerce and spend serious money into e-commerce. Because right now, I see these brands spending minuscule budgets on e-commerce and seeing on their P&L a very small profit or no profit or even a loss sometimes, and they kind of ignore the whole thing, right? So I think they should really, bet big on e-commerce, the Sri Lankan big brands. So two things. One is FDIs, foreign companies coming to Sri Lanka and doing e-commerce. Second option, Sri Lankan big brands putting big money into e-commerce. Those two will grow e-commerce.
Now, Dulith, like somebody watching might say, hey, what is this guy talking about? He's running an e-commerce company and he's demanding more competition. Well, what is
my competition is retail, not e-commerce. My competitor is the shop out there. It's not some website. Because when I'm looking at 2.5% of the market, why am I trying to compete with this 2.5% when I have 97.5 outside that I need to compete with? Right. So,
and actually looking at the e-commerce market now, of course, coming back to Kapruka, what do you see for the future? What is your next step?
So Kapruka has, actually we haven't formally announced, it may be the formal announcement here.
Yeah.
We are having ambitions to be listed. So we may be planning on an IPO, but we will do a much more formal announcement later. Because there's only there's almost no e-commerce company in Sri Lanka currently can boast profits for the last 3-4 years or even 10 years. And without that, you cannot go for IPO in Sri Lanka.
Without the history of the
history of performance. So we have that. And also e-com is a market that you can demand for about 8 to 10 times multiple of valuation. So we have strong ambitions on IPO. That's one. Second is I'm very big on this whole cross-border piece that you asked me about, selling Sri Lankan brands in the global market.
Because this is only 20 million people here, and you have 7 billion.
Do you know that Sri Lanka is the #1 exporter for cinnamon, not Ceylon cinnamon, okay, just cinnamon. But we got only $150 million last year from cinnamon. Why? Because we are selling in bulk.
No value
so we know value addition, exactly. We are the second largest tea exporter to the world. Okay, but we only got a few $1 billion last year. That's nothing because we are selling in bulk. Only few brands are doing it. So I'm very keen on this huge market for getting these Sri Lankan brands into the larger e-com markets and doing this cross-border e-commerce through Kapruka. Actually, I have more interest in that than making this 2.5% in Sri Lanka to 3.5%. I think I have more potential of taking this stuff out there.
I think that's a brilliant plan. I think there are so many local manufacturers wanting that global marketplace. Right?
Absolutely. There's about 15 that are now that we have listed already. But there are, what I'm trying to look for here is brands that has already made a mark in the global markets. Those are much easier to sell. Because those brands been already searched for. If you today go to Amazon.com or the US Amazon.com and search for a few Sri Lankan brands, you will see how many Kapruka is already now selling on those markets.
And of course, talking about brands in the online marketplace now, of course, conventional marketing and conventional retail is very straightforward. You go out there, you advertise, you go to the market and you buy the product and go out. So when you're marketing something online, how does that particular network work?
Well, you have two ways. Generally, the easy way is you discount a product and you kind of really bank on that people will come to you because of the discount. Second option that we actually follow is we really invest in the brand. Right? We invest in really massaging the brand and positioning it in a way like Kapruka, where people trust the brand to buy. Otherwise, we cannot demand the certain pricing positions. We cannot demand unless you position the brand properly. So we really invest in the brand building part. And today, top of mind, I will go to Amazon to buy a product. I don't even bother, trying to see if it is a few dollars here and there in another website because I know Amazon brand will take care of my order. The experience
The ease of use.
Yes, the ease of use. No, not only the website's ease of use actually. It's actually the delivery experience. We call it the doorstep experience. If the doorstep experience is good only, that customer will come back.
Yeah.
Right?
I think that leads me to my next question. I think this will be my final question. You have experience building a company from ground up, from $500 up to this brand, and seeing it through. What are the experiences you learned for not customer loyalty, employee loyalty?
Superb question again. It means the world to me. I mean, I remember when I was one employee company, when I was two employee company, when I was 3 and 5, and now today to the current level. It was all built with the talent of the team. What I've been trying to do now is really to make baby CEOs within the company. If you look at each department, I see stars in those departments, and I see a mini CEO basically. So within Kapruk, if you see, there's a whole tribe of smaller companies working together.
Yeah.
Right? So that's the family culture in Kapruk.
I think the encouragement of entrepreneurial spirit that I see in you is something that we have to commend.
Thank you.
With that, we will end the first segment of the show. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Dulith Herath.
Thank you.
He is the founder and chairman of Kapruk.com. A great segment. With that, we will move on. We will be back with the stock market update and the market discussion segment. So don't go anywhere. Stay tuned in. We'll be right back.